Hello and welcome to another episode of PACMAN'S Revenge. And today we have a thing. This thing. This piece of junk is an old, no-name, no-brand Pentium 4 machine I was using during my university years. I found it recently in a corner of my cellar and I decided to dig it up and play with it. Maybe I can restore it to its former absolute mediocrity. Maybe I can even install a few games. I don't know yet what I will do with this machine. It will be an interesting project. Certainly I will need to clean it. So let's start with an external inspection. Nothing interesting is going on with this front panel. We just have the three status LEDs and here on the side a floppy disk drive unit placed vertically. In the secret compartment we find the most uninspiring power button ever and the CD-ROM unit, which is actually a combo CD-ROM DVD-ROM unit. That's cool. So the position of the floppy drive and of the power button would suggest that this unit was intended to be used vertically, like this. But I never really liked the idea of using my CD-ROM drive vertically, so I've always used the machine horizontal, laying horizontal on the desk, just like that, with the CRT monitor on top. And I have to admit there is testimony of that, as the case is heavily scratched here and there and in dire need of a paint job and a cleanup, because there is a layer of grime that is 12 years old that needs to be removed. The back of the unit sports the tiniest power supply unit that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, literally, look at that. I really wonder how this little guy can power the entire PC. Next to it, we have the back plate of the motherboard with the usual connectors. We have PS2 for keyboard and mouse, serial and parallel, a VGA connector, Ethernet, two USB 1.1 port, and the three audio jacks right here. Next to it I can see I have four PCI slots that are empty, one of which is lacking the metal plate. I don't know why, I don't care, because I don't need it. Okay, so back panel screws are missing. This is a good sign. When I stored this unit 12 years ago, the top half of the case was rusty and full of corrosion. At that time, I treated it by soaking the case in alcohol vinegar for 12 hours and brushing the corrosion off. I'm actually glad to see that the treatment still holds up today. Oh my god, this case is a mess! Besides the cringe of finding a floating hard drive, which is totally on my younger self, idiot, look at that! Early 2000 cable management at its finest. I mean, it looks like the aftermath of a civil war between the components. Also, working with this case is truly a punishment. Screws in unreachable positions, interlocked latches, zip ties everywhere, and a general disregard for maintainability that... Ugh! But it was quality controlled in 2003, so... yay? Finally, we can look inside the belly of the beast, where we find a Channelwell Technologies 200 watt power supply that looks more like a fire hazard to me, with the usual tangle of wires on the back of the unit, because modularity is for the weak. An uninspiring CD-ROM DVD-ROM driver unit, a actually conveniently identifiable broken shard of a rewritable CD, an absolutely average Intel D845GLLY motherboard equipped with a Pentium 4 microprocessor, 256 MB DDR RAM in a single bank, apparently a missing coin cell battery, a 40 GB Maxtor IDE 133 hard disk drive, and a nice cute little dust bunny. I'm gonna call you George. Hello George, stay put. Time to clean up this bad boy. I usually start from the case and use a dry paper towel to remove most of the dust. Then I use a glass cleaning product and a fresh paper towel to remove all remaining grime. It's important to clean all parts, even if they look okay. After the first pass with a moist towel, you will know what I mean. I also clean all ribbon cables, as they get yucky pretty quickly without proper care. Now, I don't want to open the power supply, so I decided to remove all dust using compressed air. And look at that dust cloud. Well, since I have the can at hand, I might as well use it on the motherboard. There, as new. And here's a panorama of all components, squeaky clean and ready to be reassembled. Now, this case is really in a bad shape. It is heavily scratched and paint started falling off in a few places. I decided though that I will not repaint it, it's too much work. Instead, I will take inspiration from Clint of LGR and wrap the whole case in wood grain adhesive foil. Now, believe it or not, this wood grain foil has extensive instructions, which we don't need because who cares? It's easy, you just go slow, try to avoid forming air bubbles between the case and the foil, and that's it. No need for instructions. And it's now time to reassemble the unit. Thanks to the passionately bad cable management and the excruciatingly inconvenient case design, putting the machine back together is a long, tedious and boring process. Not difficult, just long. Also, it's very convenient to take a lot of pictures while disassembling the machine and use them as a guideline while putting it back together. This helps avoiding the spare screw syndrome. Last step, closing the wood grain case and fastening a brand new set of screws on the backside of the unit. Ah, good as new. Oh, I'm gonna have so much fun with this machine. I already have a list of upgrades and software that I want to install on this little guy. Before playing, I need to configure the BIOS of the machine to boot from CD and install the operating system. Now, the computer boots only from floppy and from hard disk. So I need to go to the menu and... Wait, where is the CD-ROM drive? Why can't I boot from CD? Oh, that's why! I forgot to install the data cable. Time to reopen the case and have some more fun with cable management. Yay! So happy. Okay, now I should be able to select finally the CD-ROM drive as a boot device in the BIOS. And off we go with installation of Windows XP. Cheers! For retro gaming, this machine is probably too recent. However, I do have a soft spot for Windows XP, and there are a few games from the early 2000s I really want to play again. With a few hardware upgrades, maybe a new graphics card and a memory expansion, this machine can become a beloved item in my collection. Certainly, it will be an excellent project box for future upgrades. So, the first thing I noticed is that Windows cannot recognize a bunch of peripherals. But worry not, for I have the power of the drivers! Conveniently fetched from the Intel website. Believe it or not, this old motherboard and its chipsets are still supported by Intel. After installing all sorts of utilities for the integrated chipset, the machine is finally up and running and ready to play. As a quick test, I dug up my old copy of the original Age of Empires, a game that deserves a video on its own actually. Despite all problems lamented by several users, such as the horrible pathfinding algorithm of the units, Age of Empires sits today in my top 10 chart of best time wasters. I've spent way more time conquering ancient lands than I dare to remember. The game was heavily improved in its second installment, Age of Empires 2, which in my opinion is still one of the most enjoyable real-time strategy games out there, hands down. Anyway, I will let my villagers continue building their bungalows on the beach. In the meantime, I thank you very much for watching. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe and stick around for more. My name is Kradion, and this was PACMAN'S Revenge.